Harper Perennial and HarperAudio present Sea Friendship, a novel by Jeremy Gordon. Performed by Josh Bloomberg. You forget whole years, and not necessarily the least important ones. Javier Marias. Part 1. America was on its way out, the stranger insisted. This much was clear. He wrote history books nobody read, and taught classes nobody revered, and composed tweets nobody shared. A path he didn't regret, because his work was vital and had led him to conclude, at odds with the forgivable naivete of his undergraduates and the unforgivable naivete of his peers, that the signs were dismal. Fucked, even. The student loan bubble, tensions with China, the hollowing of rural America, the collapse of the reasonable center, medical debt, race relations. My God, the climate crisis, and on top of all that, the looming threat of another 4 years, which, all liberal hysteria aside, our enemies in the Kremlin were probably planning right this moment. It added up, and it added up, and it added up until one actually could not believe how much it was adding up. For sure, I said, stretching to see if the bartender was back with my gin and tonic. It's ironic, the stranger said, leaning into the bar, because the Russians are only doing what we've done to however many other democracies around the world. In a way, you could say we're getting our just desserts. Actually, I'll say it exactly like that. We're getting our just desserts. He apologized for getting bent out of shape. He knew it made him no fun at staff meetings or baby showers. But if you looked at the world with unblinking clarity, the way one must if they wanted to fall asleep every night with a clean conscience and clear heart, it was the only possible takeaway. And if it meant he was drinking by himself on a weeknight instead of spending time with his kids, well, that was a tolerable trade-off. There were worse fates, such as obliviousness or unearned arrogance, he said, along with something else I didn't catch in the ambient noise, before I nodded several times and walked away. I was not interested in feeling nihilistic about the state of the world. I was more interested in the bar, as part of my ongoing taxonomy of Los Angeles nightlife. The walls were painted pitch black and lined with taped-up cushions. The jukebox didn't follow any logic beyond music for people to kiss to, skipping from Lynyrd Skynyrd to Travis Scott to Sade. The room was blanketed in an ominous red light, except for the cheap fluorescent glow of the beer fridges behind the bar. Overall, it had the vibe of an Amsterdam sex dungeon. But it was no more bizarre a place to meet Kelsey than anywhere else in Los Angeles, because I hadn't been anywhere else in Los Angeles. When she suggested it, I didn't possess the knowledge to confidently counterpoint with, "No, not there, how about here?" as I might have in New York. I was just along for the ride. In fact, I'd agreed so enthusiastically that I hadn't considered how unusual it was to be meeting her at all until I walked into the bar. 5 more days until my medical leave ended, and I flew home, which meant 5 more opportunities to hunt down the night in this alien city. And I was using one of them to maybe awkwardly hang out with a professional acquaintance, or whatever you called those tertiary friends from way back you followed on social media without ever thoughtfully interacting with them. I knew what Kelsey looked like now because I'd seen photos of her on Instagram and received her press releases in my inbox. But I didn't know how she talked. I didn't even remember how she'd talked when we'd actually known each other, because it wasn't like we'd been close in the first place. She'd mostly been a girl from high school, until the unfortunate sequence of events during the summer after high school when I tried to make her my girlfriend, which, not coincidentally, was the last time we'd hung out. I hadn't really thought about all that in at least a decade, but it pushed its way to the front the instant we recognized each other in the bar. And after the requisite hug and burst of hellos, I sat down hoping she didn't remember.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?